going to talk in particular about nature's beauty and how that can link into nature's connectedness. So we know that merely being exposed to natural environments is good for our health and well-being, but even better is if we feel engaged with those natural environments and connected to them and part of them. And this has been shown through so much literature now to be beneficial to our health and well-being, and I think we all know this, and that's why we're all at this workshop. So nature connection is different. It goes above and beyond just exposure and visits. It really does have a positive impact on our health and well-being, and there are lots of interventions out there that people have been trying to engage people with nature and to get them to feel that nature connection. And several of these interventions, such as the Wildlife Trust 30 Days Wild study and our study at Derby looking at engaging people with nature in Sheffield, they've all started to show that we can improve people's nature connection and thereby their well-being through these different interventions. And there are different pathways that we found that increase people's nature connection, and one of those is nature's beauty. So we did a study where we got people to do walks around natural areas, and they recorded the good things that they noticed in these areas. And what we picked up from people's comments was that contact with the natural environment was important, having more of a deeper meaning or connection to that environment, feeling strong emotions in that environment, having compassion for other species and environment and nature, and also appreciating nature's beauty were all pathways by which people felt connected to nature. So the beauty pathway is described as engagement with the aesthetic qualities of nature, appreciating natural scenery, or engaging with nature through the arts. And through people's comments with the 30-day wild scheme that the Wildlife Trust ran, people were saying lots of wonderful things about how much they're appreciating nature's beauty, from the mundane day-to-day stuff in urban areas to holidays they'd obviously had where they'd seen things like dolphins leaping through the British waters. And some of the comments that we had were things like people commenting on the vibrancy of colours in nature, the surprising grace and agility of birds, the ghostly beauty of caterpillar webs on bushes, stormy skies dotted with swallows and bees, cycling to work along a riverbank and seeing the sun glistening on the water, the whole scene being idyllic, with banks of cow parsley, insects buzzing, birds singing, and rabbits nibbling the grass. And through our project in Sheffield, we've been using an app to get people to notice the good things about urban nature, and some very similar comments are coming out with people's surprise at finding nature on their doorstep, and the surprise of it being in such urban areas and by nature being seemingly so unfazed by human presence. So we're getting a lot of these comments about awe and beauty expressed at being in natural environments, whether they're more rural settings or even urban day-to-day settings. And what several research studies have started to show is that whilst there's a direct link between nature connection and happiness, this often tends to be mediated by nature's beauty. And in addition to that, our pro-social and helping behaviours such as empathy and generosity have been linked to nature's beauty. And certainly nature connection has been shown in several studies to be linked to pro-environmental behaviours. So the more you appreciate nature's beauty and feel connected to nature and part of it, the more likely you are to be motivated to care for it and look after it and engage in pro-environmental behaviours. These are just some things that people have noticed around urban green environments with the Sheffield Improving Wellbeing Through Urban Nature study. So this was a mobile app that we got people to use, and it prompts users to notice the good things about urban green spaces. So it's part intervention, but also a great data collection tool. So we're using GPS to track people around Sheffield's green spaces, and we're seeing their exposure to green space and what type of green space seems to benefit them the most, so that we can try and feed this back into councils and town planners and say, well, if you're going to have green space, these are the features that you should optimise if you want to increase human health and well-being and the well-being of your environment. And not surprisingly, the spaces that people tend to rate as feeling better in tend to be the spaces that have more diverse planting schemes, range of habitats, and much more biodiversity. So these are just some of the comments people have made in the photos they took through the app. So people saying, I had a lovely view of Crooks Valley Park. I went for a walk in Parkwood Springs and wasn't expecting to see such beautiful heather. I mean, this is just up from Sheffield train station, so it doesn't take much to get out into nature. And several plants gaining a good foothold on a wall. And with us becoming more and more urbanised, it's more important now than ever that we get people to appreciate the beauty of the day-to-day nature that's on their doorstep, so they can get that daily dose of contact with nature and appreciating its beauty. There's been a major study recently where researchers used panoramic scenes like this and exposed people to them and measured their heart rate variability. And what they found is that it stimulated both their parasympathetic nervous system, so that's our soothing rest and digest system, and our sympathetic nervous system, which is more about feeling activated and excited. So it shows that nature, or even viewing a beautiful scene like this, has the potential to stimulate our physiological system in positive ways. So feeling awe for seeing such a beautiful scene stimulates our sympathetic nervous system and gets us excited. And seeing this kind of scene also can make us feel relaxed and stimulate our parasympathetic nervous system. And of course it's important to have a good balance between those two systems, and nature can provide both of these types of emotion. So there's been a wealth of research looking at forest bathing, particularly in Japan. Now this is where people go out into the woodland and just appreciate being mindfully aware of the woodland around them and listening to the sounds and smelling the smells and having all the sensations of being in the woodland. And lots of these studies have measured heart rate variability, and they consistently find that it's being in woodlands stimulates our parasympathetic nervous system. So it's all about feeling rested and soothed and relaxed in these natural settings, and having a good balance between our sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, or high heart rate variability, is also vital to our physical health as well as our mental health. And this is just a bit of a framework for that model. So this is based on Professor Paul Gilbert's work. He's a long-time mental health psychologist, and he proposes this different emotional system where we've got the capacity to feel two different types of positive emotion. One is about feeling driven and motivated and excited and feeling joy and awe, and that's associated with when we're out in nature and we feel excited by things. Then we have our contentment system, which is just about feeling calm and connected and soothed and content. Now this system is typically associated with our attachment relationships and our social relationships, but it can also be stimulated by just being out in nature and feeling soothed by it. And then we have our threat system, which is all about defensive behaviours and just trying to keep ourselves safe and avoid dangers. And what we're proposing is that nature has the capacity to stimulate both these types of positive affect system. So the more kind of feelings of joy and excitement that are linked to our sympathetic nervous system, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which is more linked to our feelings of calmness and feeling connected. So nature in itself can act as an emotional regulator. But it's not just about human health and well-being, it's about nature's well-being too. And recently we've been seeing really shocking declines in biodiversity that we have in the UK and worldwide. And it's important to have nature connection, because if we feel emotionally moved by nature, then we feel more motivated to protect it and engage in pro-environmental behaviours, and that's something that nature connection has been shown to provide. At the moment we are going through a mass extinction, and we've lost 80% of our mammals, and this is what the picture's looking like more and more at the moment. So getting people to engage with nature and feel that connection can only be a good thing, and can try and help us to preserve some of our biodiversity and mixed habitats. And really that's the kind of key message to take away from this, is that interventions to increase nature connection will do so if we play on emotions and try and get people to feel joy and awe and wonder and just relaxation and soothing through nature. If If we get people to be emotionally moved, then that will lead to a greater nature connection, whereas interventions that are focused purely on increasing people's knowledge about the natural environment don't have this effect. So it's all about emotions. I believe that's the end of my talk.